All right. Here we go, back again on the other side of the coin.
All right. Here we go back again on the other side of the coin. Oh my days. The content just keeps flying in just the way we've got games flying in. We've got a great guest here, yet another top, one of the originals from Chelsea Football Twitter community. Another one of the Chelsea personalities in social media, especially in Twitter. We've got PYS. How are you doing, my man?
Yeah, thanks for a nice intro. I'm looking forward to this. Obviously, be good to have a discussion on Chelsea. I know a lot of things are happening right now in different situations. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Brilliant. And just like all the other times, I've got my main man, Ameya, my co-host in this show. Ameya, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm looking forward to the show. I mean, I have to say, I don't always agree with our guests' tweets, so I think this should be interesting.
Absolutely. Look, I don't always agree with it, but this is what we do. Hopefully we can have a respectful discussion, understand exactly how PYS is thinking, and maybe perhaps we can, go away and think about exactly what that side of the story is. And that's exactly what we do in the other side of the coin. This is why I have this name. It's called the other side of the coin. So let's get straight into it. PYS, the initial question that I want to ask you, we want to understand your standpoint on Frank Lampard and what's happening in recent times. So we get a better understanding of your sort of perspective on it. But how I want to start this is I want to go straight from the top, because I remember when Frank Lampard was appointed our manager, you're one of the I suppose I'd say very few, because a lot of them probably were too scared, probably myself as well. I was probably too scared to voice out my true opinion, because deep down, I think everyone will probably tell you now that this appointment was a bit too early for Frank Lampard. I think everyone will honestly say that. But you were one of the very few from the get-go were a little bit skeptic about this whole appointment from the beginning. What I want to know from you, PYS, is what were the concerns? What were the big concerns that sort of stuck out for you that this is not right at this stage?
I think in terms of him as a manager, obviously it was the lack of experience. Obviously, he only had 1 year at Derby, and I think the main thing for me as well was like the structure of the club, because like for me, I just saw Lampard as more of a PR move to sort of get the fans back. In Sarri's season, obviously I went to a lot of the games, and there was quite a toxic atmosphere in some of the home games. A lot of people around me were not very happy, and quite a lot of people were handing their season tickets back in. And I was reading a few like articles and reports that Chelsea were losing a bit of money. There was a lot of people handing back in season tickets and threatening not to go if Sarri was here the next year. So for me, initially, I sort of saw Lampard as like a PR move to get everyone back on board, the fans to get behind the team, because as we see now, even in, really, really bad times where clearly he needs to go, people are still behind him. So for me, it's just, I feel like they threw him in the deep end, but, it's kind of interesting because Lampard didn't have to take this job. He could have just declined. He could have just, went for more managerial experience. Chelsea could have gone for someone else, but it's very, very hard, obviously, when you're Frank Lampard, to turn this down in the first place. So, we did chuck him in the deep end, but he also chucked himself in the deep end. Fair play to him in the first place. So he did, sort of, he went for it. Fair play to him. I was behind him the first season, because who isn't, with the lack of people bringing lack of transfers. There was no transfers. There's he's very, very new. So I was like, what? Let's just see how the season goes. We'll ride it out. We'll see where we finish. Not a lot of people expect us to finish top four. And I said at the end of the season, he's done a decent job. So let's see what happens next season. But I think the turning point for me, obviously, is when you get back so heavily in the summer, the next season you have to deliver. Like, you have to be doing better than this. And I put out at the start of the season, I did a season predictions with another Chelsea account, CFC Daily, and he asked quite a few of us to sort of do our season predictions, where we'd finish, sort of, etc. And I said sort of third, because everyone. This is the thing is, right? Everyone agreed that we should be closing the gap. Everyone agreed that, but now
100%.
all of a sudden we're not closing the gap. People are like, well, you know what? Difficult season. Yeah, we'll take fourth, and now we're not even going to get fourth, are we? Like, let's be honest, it's going to be very, very difficult to get fourth. So, like, it's funny to me how people are still backing Lampard right now. And I think those things I just mentioned there in terms of the structure and also his lack of experience were the initial sort of doubts for me. And also the fact that people are just going to blindly back him, as we've seen right now.
Nah, 100% POS. It's a very good point. Two things I want to actually talk about, the things that you've raised. First of all, the top four. I was just actually just looking into this. You got Man City, probably the biggest title contenders at the moment. They're leading the table with a game in hand. I think Man United's now leading it, or I think it might be even, something like that. Man United, Man City are even. Man United definitely going for it. Leicester are looking very good. And then you've got Liverpool, who are currently fourth. So I don't know how any of these teams really get toppled over, because all of those four look really, really strong. And then when you look under that, you've got Spurs, Southampton, Everton. So, yeah, it's going to be one mammoth task to get fourth. And it would mean those top four teams would have to really drop their balls massively. But also going back to the point that you were saying, the concerns about Frank Lampard, just quickly, what were your sort of thoughts about his first season in the Championship when he was looking after Derby? Like, were you looking at him closely during that moment? Did you watch any of the games? Were you sort of, did certain concerns like rise at that point? Or were you sort of thinking, oh, you know what, like, I mean, he has something, but, overall he may not have the whole package to lead Chelsea. What were your thoughts during the Derby days?
You know what? Like, I didn't watch too many games of him at Derby, but the games I did see against Leeds at Ellen Road, and also the game that obviously he came to us at Stamford Bridge, Derby pretty much outplayed us in that game when we played them under Sarri. And true. What I saw from Lampard there was good attacking football. I saw people that knew their positions, knew what to do. Yes, they weren't the best in defence, but they're a Championship team. So you know what? Back then, I was kind of excited because I was like, look, if he can do this with a Derby team, what can he do with investment? What can he do with better players? I was intrigued to see what he could do. Of course, I was worried because of his lack of experience, but I was also intrigued. And I think that's what pulled a lot of people in. It's the fact that, you know what, it's not just Frank Lampard. He actually plays some decent football here, and I think that's why so many of us got excited towards the start of this season, because, once we fixed up the defence and we wasn't conceding for those few games, everyone was like, oh, well, you know what? We can score goals and now we can defend. We've got Thiago Silva. We've got Reece James on form. We've got Ben Chilwell looking good. Zuma's quite consistent next to Silva. There's no reason why we can't win the league. That's what everyone's thinking.
True,
and now it's completely gone to shreds in it. And it looks like it's got to the point now where the players don't believe in him and they've just down tools like we see under so many other managers. Absolutely, man. I completely feel the same sentiment. I'm going to pass it on to Ameya. You've got the next question, my man.
Yeah, I think this next question is slightly related to what you mentioned already. Last season, of course, I think he definitely exceeded expectations last season. I mean, quite frankly, I don't think anyone, he himself probably wouldn't have expected him to finish in the top four, right? I think everyone was writing us off so bad, especially after we lost Eden Hazard as well. So I think that last season, he definitely exceeded expectations. And this season, as you mentioned, what we needed was improvement, right? We never expected a title challenge. All we wanted to see was improvement and closing the gap to the likes of Liverpool and to the likes of City. But this season, of course, he was backed in the summer as well, heavily backed. I think we got 2 centre backs, we got a full back, we got a striker, we got an attacking midfielder, we even got a goalkeeper. So he was definitely backed in the summer. And instead of closing the gap, this season, he's sort of fallen off, as you mentioned, and it looks like we're not even probably going to make top 4 looking at the table. So where do you think that all went wrong? And do you think that it was probably was it the expectation, the burden of expectation? Because last season, we didn't have any expectation going on to the season and he overperformed. But this season, when he was, allowed to spend that money, when he was allowed to get those number of players, was it the burden of expectation that's letting him down right now?
It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you could argue that we was top of the table, not too long ago, and everything was looking rosy. So, I see Lampard as someone who likes a challenge. He doesn't back away from a challenge, and I don't think that too high of expectation would phase him. He's already said in the media that, you know, he will rise up to the challenge. He knows the expectations of this football club. So I don't necessarily think it was, you know, the expectation on him, because I think he knew that going into the job. You know, when he was signing these players, he knows in previous times what happens if you don't deliver, you get sacked. And although he's getting, you know, let off a little bit at the moment, it will end like that if this continues. So I don't necessarily think it's the expectation. No.
So what do you think are the reasons then? So where do you think it all went wrong? You know, we've of course seen a lot of debate on Twitter, you know, about that unbeaten run being sort of, you know, maybe it was deceiving us, but how can you go from being top of the table to almost 10th if should results not go our way? You know, Aston Villa have 3 games in hand on us now. And so where do you think that all went wrong all of a sudden so quickly? I mean, I think it was 45 days last when we were top of the table.
Yeah, and this is where I'm lost for words, because we was playing decently in that run, and all of a sudden we've just gone to shreds. It's just like, you know, a couple of defeats and then that's it. They all just lose their minds. Weak mentality from a lot of the players, I think. I think the Arsenal result was really damning, because I think that was kind of a turning point, because, you know, everyone expected us to win that game, let's be honest. And
especially being a B team as well for Arsenal. I think you're spot on, PY.
That result was disgusting. Honestly, I was surprised he wasn't sacked after that result. That was absolutely disgusting, honestly. And at half time, I know that Lampard went mental at players. So is it a case of, you know, this squad can't handle pressure as much as we thought they could do? Is it a case of too many players in this team having weak mentalities and not being willing to fight? Or is it a case of just he simply bought too many players? You know, I've seen a lot of people say that, you know, let's be honest, he's bought too many players. Last season, we had more, you know, it felt more like Chelsea last season, which doesn't like it. You know, when I was watching Chelsea last season under Lampard, it just felt like Chelsea. And it's such a cliche thing to say, but, you know, everyone was sort of, it just felt more together. It really did. And this season, just, it sucks, to be honest. It's almost like we've bought too many players, and, you know, the team continuity is just not there. It's I don't know, man. It's disappointing, but I just think it's got to a point now where we can't really save it, because the players are lacking confidence. And our new signings, especially, they're just wow. Like Havertz and Werner. I mean, blimey, they are just completely out of it, aren't they? They are, especially Werner. He's just he's finished at the moment. He's so low on confidence.
No, 100%. I just want to interject here for a second. It's a very good point that you raise, PYS, in regards to perhaps too many players were brought in. Like, I mean, that's a lot of players to gel together, and you know, basically managers were all different types of personalities too. I know Frank has said that Werner and Kai Havertz are low maintenance players. You don't have to look after them too much. But as you said, you know, now Werner's in a mess. Kai Havertz is sort of in a similar mess as well. Probably not as bad as Timo Werner, but still, you know, there's a lot of work to be done. I feel like even Hakim Ziyech is falling into a bit of a mess in recent times, where with the injury, and now he's, you know, the pressure on him to do well almost every single match. And now we're leaking goal in defense. So all the talk about Thiago Silva being the defensive leader, which he is our best defender, but we are still leaking goals left, right, and center. So I don't know, man. It just feels like you could be onto something. Maybe had Frank just got maybe 2 players and then just built it up from there, keeping the core, bringing 2 players, probably maybe Hakim Ziyech and maybe a Thiago Silva, keeping the core together, and then this window he brings in another player. But I guess, you know, the whole, I think where the issue sort of turned, it was with the whole with the virus that's going around. I think there was an opportunity financially to get some of these players before all the other teams get. So, yeah, sorry, my man, Ameya. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, nothing. I think that was an excellent point that PYS made, actually, because we've seen it in the past as well, when Spurs sold Gareth Bale and then they signed a whole list of players, right? They flopped massively that season. Yeah. Even before that, when Liverpool sold Luis Suarez to Barcelona, they once again bought a whole list of players and none of them performed well as well. So I think that's a really good point. And as you mentioned, I think the main reason, of course, was the pandemic, right? Timo Werner had a release clause which was going to expire. So then they were like, he works, we can work him in. And then the same thing with Havertz. Havertz wanted to leave this window. And I'm pretty sure without the pandemic, I think so many other clubs, I think I was almost certain that he'd go to Real Madrid. But because of the pandemic and because Real Madrid are well broke, I think that Chelsea's like, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, right? He was top 5 youngsters in the world at Leverkusen, and you don't you don't pass on such players. So I think that was partially the reason. I think we did sign all those players. But anyway, I think I'll move this on to you, Miz. I think you've got the next question.
No, 100%. Now that was top, actually a point from PYS. PYS, next question. I've been really struggling with this one in the last few days. There's a lot of our fan base. You probably have already noticed it as well. You probably already even faced this in social media, especially in Twitter, how certain fans with their sentiments, there's a whole thing going around. I tweeted this morning, Sydney time, which would have been UK last night, that as soon as one becomes sentimental, logic and rationality sort of goes out the window, because you're not really thinking anymore. It's all about heart. It's all about, just vibes. Sometimes I'd even say you're not really actually thinking properly, objectively to make a statement. So basically what I want to ask you is, this whole notion of sentiment and how people are hanging on to this and not being objective. Do you sort of disagree with this whole notion, or do you feel that sentiment should be kept aside when we're looking at Chelsea Football Club? Yes, as a fan, be sentimental, but when it comes to the crunch time, you need to be objective. And just because Frank Lampard was a club legend as a player, that doesn't necessarily translate into a managerial super class as well. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, I'm seeing like a really mixed bag now from certain people. I get some people that message me and reply to me that were Lampard in, and they say, you know what, he's clearly not good enough, we should just move on. And then you get some people who have just been ridiculous and hanging on to the hope that, it's Frank Lampard, he's missed 150 IQ, and that doesn't even translate onto football terms. So it's like, it's really funny to see people like still backing him, because let's be honest, guys, if this was any other manager, he'd probably be out the door after Arsenal. Come on, stop holding on to hope. I mean, one of the tweets I actually saved, because I'm obviously this question was going to come up. Someone put out the other day, like, since Roman arrived, the longest Chelsea have gone without winning the league is 5 years. They put, would 100% wait 5 years to see if we can win it with Lamps, bring him through the youth, rather than having a revolving door of managers with no connection to the club. It's just like, for me, I know they coexist right now. I'm comparing Mount and Havertz here. It's like keeping Mount for 5 years and passing up on Havertz. You don't pass up on a Ferrari. It's the same as a manager.
True.
Nagelsmann, we can get in the summer. So are you telling me you're keeping Lampard beyond this season, wherever he finishes, and passing up on that Ferrari, which is Nagelsmann? No, you're not. Like, let's be serious. And the board are not either. So I don't get these sentimental tweets from these people backing Frank Lampard. I know he's your favourite ever player. Look, he's probably up there with my top 5, with Hazard, with Drogba, with Cech, etc., with Terry, But you've got to separate player from manager. And I've tweeted this so many times. Like, honestly, I don't have patience to speak about it anymore, because I've honestly gone through this topic about 1,000 times, and I've just started literally just blocking people that are just saying, I'm Frankie, no, and it's people without an argument for being Frank Lampard in that are annoying me. Sure. I don't mind if you're Frank Lampard in and you can give me reasons, but I don't know why there is reasons. The reasons that I'm getting are, he's super Frank Lampard, we just went on an unbeaten run. Like, what is that for a reason? Like, there's no reason to keep him in right now. Like, there's no reason at all. And there is interims that can come in, as we are going to go on soon with the managers, talking about managers. There is interims that can come in. There is people that can come in the summer. So, there's even permanent managers that could come in right now. So, no, Lampard shouldn't stay, and the sentiment is ridiculous from a lot of people,
Nah, man, I was watching Lee Gunner and Matisse on Matisse's channel just a couple of days ago, off the back of that loss. Yesterday, off the back of the Leicester loss, and Lee Gunner was saying that sentiment killed his club. And obviously, to people that don't know who Lee Gunner is, a massive Arsenal fan. So he was saying that sentiment killed his club, and it's still killing his club. And he was saying that sentiment's going to kill your club as well, the way it's going. And as you said, PYS, man, looks like Frank's going to get a little bit longer. That's the report that's been coming out in recent hours. I've just had a look, and I'm just worried. I haven't seen anything over the last 7 or 8 games to say that he's all of a sudden just going to flick of a finger, change everything around. I mean, forget about the Luton game. That should be a win. But the one after against Wolves, I can't put my hand on my heart and say we're going to win this. So, if we're going to feel like this on every match, how long until it's just a mammoth task. That's the issue. And then I feel like, as you said, man, as much as I hate to say this, it's probably the right time to part ways and bring someone in and just start the rebuild again. So I'll pass on to Ameya for the fourth question, which will be very, very important in regards to the managers and whatnot that's lined up.
Yeah, I think that of course both of you mentioned I'm still kind of Frank Lampard in, but not because of sentiment. I still think he deserves little bit more time. Maybe those 2
You're
games.
one of those ones with a super Frank. PYS, he's one of those ones. Super
What's
Frankie.
my ad? What's my ad? What's my ad? Anyway, but yeah, so I think that in fact, before he was hired, I had the same concerns. In fact, I didn't want Lampard to join the club when he did, but when he joined, I just can't get myself to, want about. But anyway, let's leave that aside. That's another topic altogether. The topic that I wanted to, of course, ask was, you mentioned the managers, and this is the question. I think even before, right before the season started, right when we signed Werner and Kai Havertz, I could see so many, those tactical football accounts, all those people keep on mentioning that Chelsea probably have a long-term plan of hiring a manager who has his roots in the Bundesliga, not necessarily German, because of course Hasenhuttl is Austrian, but they want a manager who's rooted to the Bundesliga to get the best out of the club, because they've seen what Jurgen Klopp can do. And we've seen everywhere that German managers are actually excelling, right? And I think that the club wants to have that sort of philosophy at Chelsea. So I think the 4 managers which were shortlisted, according to the Athletic article at least, I think the first one was Thomas Tuchel, who of course parted ways with PSG. He's a free agent right now. And then we've got Ralf Rangnick, who is the former Leipzig boss. But I think he's been touted to come in as interim until the summer. And then, of course, Julian Nagelsmann, as you mentioned earlier, I think he's another very exciting young manager. And the fourth one being Southampton's Ralph Hasenhuttl. So what are your thoughts on that? And who do who is your number one target, taking all things into account, right? Not just because, obviously, if you ask someone a question among these 4 managers, everyone would obviously pick Nagelsmann, right? Without a doubt. But who is your pick, considering the situation and considering, the fact that Tuchel is currently a free agent and he could start his project right away?
Look, I've said this yesterday. I believe that top 4 is now over. So for me right now, personally, it's about getting a manager in, not necessarily scrapping the season, because I still want to try and win the FA Cup, but sort of just trying to do our best right now, and just see where it goes this season. Start building team chemistry, focusing on next season, because I really do believe it's that deep, the table. I put out a tweet yesterday, guys. Aston Villa have 3 games in hand, and they're 2 points behind us. And that's not mentioning, not even mentioning your Leicesters. That's not even mentioning your Southamptons. Another team, Everton under Carlo Ancelotti, Spurs under Mourinho, very experienced manager.
West Ham's doing good as well.
Yeah. So, for me, looking at the table, I see no way how we get top 4. So I think my emergency plan would be to bring in Ralf Rangnick and then get Julian Nagelsmann in the summer. But I'm also not opposed to sort of, if the club want to do Thomas Tuchel, then do Thomas Tuchel. But I think from what I'm reading anyway, they have reservations about him being sort of, long-term for the next 2 or 3 or however many years he would stay with the board and stuff like that, and how he seems to argue and clash with people. So I don't necessarily think that's the route they'll go down. I think it will be an interim and then Nagelsmann. And I think maybe that is why they haven't got rid of Lampard right now, is because they need someone to come in, and I don't think they fancy Tuchel. I really don't. Otherwise, I think he'd already be here. I don't think they fancy Eleka. Otherwise, I think he'd already be here. So, in terms of the managers, why I would want Ralf Rangnick come in, he's got an identity. Unlike Lampard, he has played many different formations. Hoffenheim 4-3-3, which we're used to. Other formations, he's played our 4-4-2, which has turned into a 4-2-2 in game. He's also played 3 at the backs. Something I was reading up on as well when doing some research on this guy, because obviously I didn't know a lot about him. He was a very, very big fan of Milan's Sacchi team, which adopted high pressing. He's very, very smart. He's known to be sort of one of the fathers in the German world. He's really sort of like more of an experienced Nagelsmann, I'd say. They're very, very smart. When playing 2 up top, the wingers like to tuck inside and act as playmakers. So unlike Nagelsmann, where you see a lot of the play going down the sides and width and doing 1v1s and creating overloads down the sides, what's his name? Rangnick is more of a sort of a central guy, looks for 1-2, sort of much more sort of pass in the central areas, which I think would be a change from Lampard, obviously, because Lampard is just a guy that just attacks down the wings and just crosses the ball in. So, you know, it's
do you find that strange, PYS, that he does that? Because as a midfielder, I don't remember him doing that.
No, I do find it strange, but I also think he's getting desperate, and it's his lack of tactics, his lack of knowing what to do. It's his lack of systems, it's lack of experience. You know, he doesn't have these ideas in his head like these other experienced managers do. And with Rangnick as well, he's worked with Werner. He's also said in an interview that he sees no qualities that Kai Havertz doesn't lack, and he actually sees Havertz as more of a number 9 or just behind the striker. He doesn't see him as a midfielder like Lampard does. So you wouldn't be seeing Kai Havertz as an 8 under Ralf Rangnick. You'd be seeing him in the box getting more goals, which is what we want. So
probably even up to with maybe Timo Werner and
exactly,
and Kai Havertz alongside him.
Yeah, so I'm very, very open to this guy because he's a very smart coach, and he is experienced as well. And it's not only that, people are forgetting with this guy is he also has experience with director of football role. So I know we've been linked with like your Erling Haaland and stuff, which would need Champions League football, which could be a bit of a struggle, which I don't think we're going to get anyway. But let's say if we did get it and he was the man to get it, just a hypothetical, he is one of those guys that, because he has director of football experience and he'd also be the interim manager, I'd expect him to sort of give suggestions with the club, for transfer as he builds a relationship. But you know, this would have to happen soon, because there's not actually that long left of the season. There's like half a season left. It's not as long as everyone.
We're halfway through. We're halfway through.
There's not a lot. There's not as long as people think there is, and we've got that dreaded run coming up with like Atletico Madrid, Man United, Everton. If Lampard
Liverpool as well.
Like this is why I'm banging my head against the wall. Why is he not gone now? Like, give the manager, guys, like give the manager Luton this week to build team chemistry. Just find out about his players. Then we go for Wolves on Wednesday. Why are you delaying the inevitable? You're delaying the inevitable because he's an icon. But this is what I'm saying. Has Roman gone soft? Has he gone soft? Clearly he has. Like, I'm lost for words. How has he not gone after Leicester? Like, I'm banging my head against the wall.
I'm surprised, honestly, how he has not gone after Leicester.
I'm furious. He's still here. Like, honestly, man. Yeah.
No, true. You brought up some really good points about Rangnick. You know, he's very good with the academy as well. He's unearthed some proper talent. I've read up on it. And the great gegenpressing as well. He was one of the initial people way back in the early 90s, even late 80s, because he started his coaching career quite early. I was reading up that he was one of those people that have sort of taken up on that, embraced that gegenpressing. And you look at our pressing now, like forget about gegenpressing. Like there's no pressing. It's depressing. That's what I've been saying in recent times. Our pressing is just horrendous. PYS, let's talk about the final question before we wrap things up. In your perspective, I know you've sort of mentioned that you're furious that he's still around, but obviously he's still around. What does he have to do from here on in to say somehow change this around for himself and like all the fans, that think like yourself, even myself, I feel like it's probably time for him to go. How does he change things around in terms of the quality of football, tactics? How does he do that? Or do you think that there is no hope?
I think that he's going to need a couple of players to step up and produce some more individual brilliance. He may need a Christian Pulisic to go on a run like he did after lockdown last season and carry us to a few games. He might need a Hakim Ziyech to turn up. He's going to need individual ability, someone to step up for him to sort of save his job, really, because from my point of view, he's done, because he has clearly lost the players, or a lot of them anyway. I mean, that last game, I'm telling you now, Mason Mount was the only one that was pressing, that was trying to get the ball forward. These guys, I've seen this before with managers.
Same.
Most of them have down tools. Most of them have given up. You may not read it in the press. There may not be articles that, Kai Havertz has given up this and that's given up. They're down tools, because they don't want to create that sort of atmosphere yet until he's like nearly gone. And then all the articles will come out after that he's sacked, that, players didn't believe in him and all this. So while he's still here, there won't be those articles. But for me, most of them have just given up in him. I think they've lost hope. And I think something to mention as well is that in that unbeaten run, a lot of our goals came from crosses. So I think, it's a difficult one for me, because I've sort of said that after that unbeaten run was a bit of the term we like to use. Yeah, the term we like to use on Twitter is Fugazi, which is like a
Fugazi.
Fugazi. It's kind of like a Fugazi run. It's not we wasn't battering teams left, right, and centre. We was just getting by. We was getting the results, and we haven't beaten a top 8 team this season, I think. So, it's really bad. And I think that even if he does turn some results around, I think he's gone in the summer anyway, because I think Roman is going to do his best to get Nagelsmann, and if not, I think he'll get a Tuchel in the summer. So personally, I think he's done, but let's see.
No, 100%, man. Honestly, this has been an amazing show. Like, I can't stress enough how much the insight that we've got from PYS, the different sort of perspective. I just hope that everyone who listens to this down the track, understands PYS and the personality, and not just, I see a lot of, every time I see tweets from PYS, there's a lot of people that show him, support, but then there's a whole heap that bash him and re-quote him and whatnot, and completely, take everything out of context. And I just hope that off the back of this, that you get to hear the person and you get to hear exactly where they're coming from, that you don't just brush things off, and that you realize that there is the other side of the coin. It's not just, blinkers on. But before we go, Ameya, just some final words from you as well to PYS.
Yeah, no, I think it was it was a great episode. I think it's always better to have a chat, rather than texting on Twitter, right? Texting on Twitter, one, it can get taken out of context. 2, you don't know the tone of the person you're talking to, and 3, there's no remedy, right? You can say whatever the hell you want, and then no one can say anything, right? The worst case, you get suspended, you make another account, and you do the same thing over again. But talking, even if you disagree with someone, talking to them, right? For example, recording this, right? I'm talking to PYS, and even though I don't necessarily agree with so many of his tweets, but when you have such a meaningful discussion, right, it gives you it gives you a different perspective on the person. So I think that's it, and I think hopefully we could carry on being like this.
100%. PYS, some final words from you, man, before we wrap things up.
Yeah, just thanks for having me on, guys. Thanks for having me on. I'm very interested to see the response to this episode, because I know there's probably a few people that won't agree with me or that don't like my Twitter account. So, I'm always open to reading the comments and stuff. So, I'm interested, and I think the main takeaway from this is that no, I don't hate Frank Lampard. He's one of my favourite players ever. I just don't think he's the right guy for the club right now. And I think, you know, I've said before in tweets that I'd love him to come back in a few years and be really successful. But for me, I'd be a hypocrite if I was to not back him the same way I've, you know, backed other managers and saying they should be going and things like that. After probably much less than Lampard has done, like in terms of like the results, you know, people have gone for much less than what Lampard's doing right now. So, just very interested. Thanks for having me on, and hopefully we can do this again soon. I'll be more than happy to come on.
100%, man. I just this is it. Like the final message that just came from you. I just hope that people realize that this guy's not a hater. He doesn't hate the club. He doesn't hate the man, Frank Lampard. He's just he loves the club a lot more. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, he's looking out for the club. So with that being said, all of PYS's social media, I'm pretty sure most of you guys follow him anyway, but it'll be in the description, plus his YouTube channel and the podcast that he's doing with CFC Dubois. All of that information will be in the description. Please follow them and listen to them as well if you get the chance. And guys, until next time, see ya.